May 1961. Universal Studios backlot Gregory Peck was walking towards stage 12 for the next scene of Cape Fear when he heard it through the open door of the production trailer. Not the words themselves at first, just the tone. The kind of casual cruelty that pretends to be professionalism. The production assistant's voice, young and confident in its certainty, explaining to someone why a newly hired black grip named Marcus Williams couldn't work the main unit. The phrase cut through the afternoon heat like a blade. He's not one of us. Gregory's jaw tightened. His 6'3" frame went still in that particular way that people who knew him recognized as dangerous, not explosive, controlled. Wait, because what happened in the next 47 minutes wouldn't just change Marcus Williams' career trajectory. It would force every person on that backlot to choose between the comfort of silence and the cost of standing with Gregory Peck when he made it clear that principle wasn't negotiable, something he'd carried since his Berkeley days. When he first understood that education meant nothing if you didn't use it to dismantle the walls that privilege built. And this time, it would cost him the goodwill of people he'd worked with for years. But Gregory Peck had learned something about himself during the making of Gentleman's Agreement back in '47. He learned that he couldn't live with silence when he heard injustice spoken out loud. He stood outside that trailer for maybe 10 seconds, gathering himself the way his grandmother had taught him to gather his thoughts before speaking, measured, deliberate. Then he pulled open the trailer door and stepped inside. The production coordinator, a man named Dennis Keller, looked up from his desk, startled. The young production assistant, the pale Marcus Williams, stood against the far wall, muscled forearms crossed, face carefully blank in the way that black men in 1961 had learned to make their faces blank when white men decided their futures. Gregory didn't raise his voice. "Never needed to Dennis," he said, his baritone filling the cramped space like a closing argument. "Could you help me understand something?" It wasn't really a question. Dennis shifted in his chair, and Gregory saw the calculation happening behind his eyes. This was Gregory Peck, the star, the producer, the man whose name was on the production company checks. But also the man everyone knew had stood up to the Hollywood blacklist, would make Gentleman's Agreement when his agent begged him not to. "Greg, this is just a scheduling thing," Dennis started, and Gregory held up one hand, palm flat, absolute. "I'd like Marcus to stay," Gregory said, his eyes moving to the young man against the wall. "I want to hear his understanding of what's being discussed here. Have you ever watched someone realize that the rules they thought were fixed might actually be negotiable?" Dennis Keller's face went through a series of adjustments. Marcus Williams uncrossed his arms slowly, and Gregory saw his throat work as he swallowed. When he spoke, his voice was careful, educated, controlled. "I was told," Marcus said, looking not at Dennis but at Gregory, "that the main unit prefers to work with crew they worked with before, that I'd be more comfortable on second unit, that it wasn't personal." Gregory nodded once, as if Marcus had just presented evidence in a trial. "I see," he said. "And Dennis, is that the policy? That we only hire people we've worked with before?" The production coordinator's mouth opened and closed. "Well, no, but because if that's the policy," Gregory continued, his voice dropping half an octave, becoming more dangerous in its quiet, "then I should mention that I haven't worked with the no gaffer or the two best boys who started last week, or the script supervisor who replaced Martha when she went to MGM." The silence in that trailer was so complete that Gregory could hear the distant sound of a crane being moved on another soundstage. He let it stretch, let it become uncomfortable, let everyone in that small space feel the weight of what was really being said. "So help me understand," Gregory said, looking directly at Dennis now, his dark eyes unblinking. "Why those hiring decisions were fine, but this one requires Marcus to be sent to second unit where, presumably, he'll be more comfortable." Dennis Keller's face flushed red and white. "Gregory, I don't think." "I'm not asking what you think," Gregory said, and now his voice had an edge like surgical steel. "I'm asking you to explain the logic of your decision so that Marcus and I can understand it. Can you do that? What would you do if you were Marcus Williams in that moment?"
Watching this famous actor, this producer, this man you'd never met before risk his professional relationships for you. When someone never stood up for you like that, when they had nothing to gain and everything to lose.
Dennis couldn't explain it, because there was no explanation that didn't reveal exactly what was happening. Exactly what Marcus had already known, exactly what Gregory was forcing into the light. It's not about logic, Dennis finally said, and Gregory nodded as if the man had just admitted to something under oath. No, Gregory agreed. It's not. He turned to Marcus then, and his voice changed, became gentler, but no less firm. Have you worked on any major productions before? Marcus straightened, and Gregory saw the intelligence in his eyes, the education he'd probably fought for, the competence that had been dismissed with 3 words. I was a grip on 2 westerns at Republic last year, Marcus said. And I did 3 weeks on a noir at RKO before that. My supervisor there, Frank Morrison, would give me a reference if you called him. Gregory pulled a pen from his jacket pocket and held it out to Dennis. Call Frank Morrison at RKO, he said, now. Dennis didn't move. The air in the trailer was thick with tension, with the knowledge that something was shifting, that the casual cruelty that had been standard procedure was being challenged by someone who had the power to challenge it. Dennis, Gregory said again, and this time everyone heard the finality in it. Call Frank Morrison. Where I walk out of this trailer, I walk off this set, and I call my lawyer. And then we'll have a conversation about what one of us means in a contract that I'm fairly certain includes language about discrimination that Universal agreed to when they signed with Melville Productions. Do you remember when stars actually used their power for something beyond themselves? When fame meant responsibility? Dennis Keller reached for his phone with a hand that trembled slightly, but Gregory wasn't done. He turned back to Marcus. While Dennis makes that call, Gregory said, I'd like to know if you've read the script for Cape Fear. Marcus blinked, surprised by the shift. Yes, sir. When I interviewed for the position, I was given sides to review so I'd understand the lightning requirements. And what did you think of it? Gregory asked, and it was a genuine question, the kind of question that treated Marcus Williams like exactly what he was, an intelligent man whose opinion mattered. I thought, Marcus said carefully, then seemed to decide something. He stood straighter. I thought it was a film about what happens when a law can't protect you, when you have to choose between what's legal and what's right. Gregory smiled, then a real smile that reached his eyes. That's a better analysis than my agent gave me, he said. He looked back at Dennis, who was dialing with shaking fingers. Marcus is on the main unit, Gregory said, full rate. And I want him on my keylight crew. It wasn't a request. Dennis Keller nodded, the phone pressed to his ear. And Gregory Peck did something that Marcus Williams would remember for the rest of his life. He extended his hand, not as a star to a crew member, as an equal to an equal. Marcus shook it, and Gregory held his gaze. You'll hear things, Gregory said quietly. After this, some of the crew will make it difficult. If that happens, you come find me directly. You'll understand. Marcus nodded, his throat working again. Yes, sir, Mott, sir, Gregory said. We're working together now. Gregory is fine. He released Marcus's hand and turned to leave, and paused at the trailer door. Dennis, you think without looking back, I'll expect Marcus on set for the lighting rehearsal at 4 o'clock. We're shooting the courtroom scene tomorrow, and I want him to understand how we're blocking it. When have you seen someone not just win a fight, but change the rules of engagement entirely? Gregory stepped out of that trailer into the California sunshine, and his hands were trembling. Not from anger anymore, from a cost. Because he knew what he'd just done. He made himself difficult. He made enemies of people who liked their procedures undisturbed.
But Gregory Peck had learned something about himself in the years since his father's pharmacy had failed during the Depression. Since he worked as a barker at the World's Fair. Since he'd studied English at Berkeley on scholarship. He'd learned that education and privilege were only valuable if you used them as leverage to pull other people up. That evening, in his trailer between setups, Robert Mitchum knocked once and let himself in. He'd heard. Of course, everyone had heard. The whole backlot was talking about what had happened in the production trailer. Mitchum dropped into the chair opposite Gregory's desk, his heavy-lidded eyes amused. You know Keller's gonna make your life hell for the rest of the shoot. Mitchum said Gregory was reviewing the next day's scenes, his reading glasses perched on his nose. Problem. He agreed without looking up. Was it worth it? Mitchum asked Gregory sit down his script then, and looked at his co-star.
There were different men. But Mitchum understood that Gregory's quiet control came from anger at injustice, carefully contained. Marcus Williams was hired because he deserved it. Gregory said and Mitchum grinned. Atticus Finch wouldn't have allowed otherwise, and neither should Gregory Peck. The next morning when Gregory arrived on set for the courtroom scene, Marcus Williams was there. He was working with the gaffer, setting up the key lights exactly where Gregory had requested them. Their eyes met across the soundstage, and Marcus gave a small nod. Gregory nodded back. No words needed. Just the acknowledgement between two men who understood that something had changed yesterday. Not everything, not enough, but something as the day progressed. Gregory noticed other things too. The way the camera operator made a point of greeting Marcus by name. The way the script supervisor asked his opinion on a lighting angle, small things, but small things that suggested the 40 witnesses in that backlot had made their choices. And more of them had chosen principle than Gregory had expected. During lunch break, the director, J. Lee Thompson, pulled Gregory aside. I heard what happened yesterday. Thompson said his voice was neutral. Careful, Gregory waited, his face giving nothing away. I want you to know, Thompson continued, that if Keller gives you any more trouble about crew decisions, you tell him to talk to me. Marcus stays on main unit full rate for the rest of the shoot. Gregory felt the tension in his shoulders ease slightly. Thank you, Lee. Don't thank me, Thompson said. Thank you for reminding us that we're supposed to be better than this. They shot the courtroom scene that day, and it was one of the best scenes in the film. Gregory playing Sam Bowden, the attorney who thought the law would protect him until he learned it wouldn't. Marcus Williams manning the key light that gave Gregory's face the exact shadows the scene needed. Everyone working together to create something that mattered. 6 weeks later, Cape Fear and Marcus Williams moved on to another production. And then another Gregory heard to the grapevine that he was becoming one of the most requested grips in Hollywood. The directors were specifically asking for him because his lighting work was exceptional. 3 years later, in 1964, Gregory was at a Hollywood function supporting the Civil Rights Act when a young black woman approached him. Mr. Peck, she said, I wanted to thank you. Marcus Williams' sister, Angela Marcus, told me what you did for him on Cape Fear, how you stood up when no one else would. Gregory felt his face war. Your brother in that position. He was qualified. Yes, Angela said he was. But he'd been qualified for 2 years before that, and no one gave him a chance until you made them. She held his gaze, and Gregory saw in her eyes something he recognized, the weight of carrying dignity in a world that questioned whether you deserved it. He's working on a big MGM picture now, Angela continued. Key grip main unit. And told me to tell you if I ever met you that every time he sets up a light, he remembers what you said in that trailer about using your privilege as leverage, about pulling people up. Do you remember when movie stars understood that fame was responsibility? And the ability to walk off a set wasn't about ego, but about principle? Gregory shook Angela Williams' hand and she smiled. He also wanted me to tell you. She said that he went to see To Kill a Mockingbird 7 times, and that every time Atticus Finch stood up in that courtroom, he thought about you standing up in that production trailer. Gregory's throat tightened. Tell him, he said quietly, that Atticus Finch was just a character. That Marcus Williams is real, and his courage in that trailer staying calm and professional when he had every right to walk out, that was more impressive than anything I did. When Gregory Peck died in June of 2003, the tributes poured in from around the world, presidents and actors and directors, all praising his body of work, his moral authority, his legacy as Atticus Finch. But among the thousands of letters his family received was one from a 73-year-old man named Marcus Williams. It was a letter from Marcus Williams, now head of a respected lighting company, thanking Gregory Peck for opening a door that had long been closed, and for showing him that power means nothing unless it's used to change the rules for others. That was Hollywood at its best. Not just stardom, but responsibility, not just fame, but character. The legacy Gregory Peck left, not as Atticus Finch, but as a man who stood up when it truly mattered. If the story stayed with you, share it. And tell us about a time when someone chose principle over comfort, or when you did. Some stories matter because they remind us what we're capable of.